Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Hey guys, real quick, before we jump into the episode, I need you to do the 3 S's for me. What is that? First of all, I need you to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss an episode of our podcast. Number 2, I need you to share it with your family and friends. Don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone else. Lastly, I need you to say something. Leave us a comment. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you want to see from us, what you like, what you don't like. We are open to your suggestions. We want to know everything that you want to let us know about the podcast. All right. Now, get back to the episode. All right. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Earnest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, make sure that you listen, like, subscribe to our podcast on all of our podcast listening profiles or platforms, should I say, as well as make sure you guys are checking us out on our YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. Make sure you guys are checking us out. Again, that's the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network, where you will find the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, as well as our sister podcast, which is the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, where we talk to other girl dads like myself in order to combat the narrative of the absent father and the fatherless daughter. Both of those podcasts, as well as some others, again, can be found on our YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. So make sure that you guys are checking us out there. Also, I'm pleased to announce our Deal to Heal School for Living, which is our new sponsor of our podcast, which you guys can go and check out because we believe that, again, to continue our mission of helping people to deal, heal, and fulfill by bringing you resources and workshops where you can learn more to help us to deal with our emotional health as well as our mental health. So again, you guys can check that out. That's the Deal to Heal School for Living on the school platform. That information will be in the description, as well as you can just scan the QR code up in the corner, and that way as well, so you can get signed up. Check it out. The first 7 days is absolutely free. Go check it out. Let us know what you think about it, and you can stay and become a member. And again, just take advantage of the workshops that we have there. But now we're going to jump right into this thing today. Just like any other day, we are blessed with a guest, Miss Trinity. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How you doing, Ernest?
I am doing well. First of all, let me say thank you for being here, because you could have been anywhere else with anyone else, but you're here today with me and my listeners, and we definitely appreciate it. And so we're going to jump right in this thing. Trinity, do me a favor. I want you to introduce yourself and tell my audience a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Well, and I'm also known as Trinity Speaks. I'm a resilient expert and a inspirational speaker. I've been speaking all over the country. I've done simulcasts that have aired all over the world. And I'm just here as a beacon of light, a beacon of hope, to let people know that healing is possible, and you can trust your resilience to get you through any and every situation that you may be facing.
I love that. And this is the place for healing, so we can talk about healing all day long. And so we're going to jump right in and actually do that. So do me a favor. I know that, you're a speaker, and again, you speak on resilience. But I know that there's always a story before the story, right? There's
Hmm.
always a story before the version of you that stands before us now, what's in the making, should I say. So tell us a little bit about your story. Just go back as far as you're willing to tell us about who Trinity is and what was that transformation that kind of brought you into who you are today.
Okay. Um, well, I always tell folks it always starts with my name. I was born on April 3rd at 3:13 in the morning in the presence of three people. I was born in a little house on La Brea. My daddy wanted us born at home. And the first thing my father did when I was born was blow marijuana smoke into my mouth and put cocaine on my gums. They said I slept for 3 days, and when I woke up, they named me Trinity. So three is definitely my number. Um, growing up in LA wasn't easy. We moved around a lot. I would say I've lived in almost every part of Los Angeles. And my father was a heroin addict. My mother, more than being addicted to any particular drug, was definitely addicted to the men that she was with. Um, my father was very abusive, so it wasn't uncommon for me to experience domestic violence. And then when I was 9 years old, one of my sisters was murdered by my mother's boyfriend. And a year after that, we were put into foster care. So I've had a lot of lived experience in dealing with trials, tribulations, tragedy, trauma. But one thing that I've always been told was that I was resilient. Long before I knew what it meant, and definitely before I could spell it, I knew that it was a part of who I was, and at the very core of who I was. And no matter how many times I've been in situations that most people would never come back from, there's always been this whisper in my head that has just almost demanded of me to get up. And
Mhm.
so I don't know how. I don't even know why sometimes, but I've always managed to get up and rise to the occasion when my family has needed me, when it's been time for me to show up, when it's been time for me to step in, when it's been time for me to advocate. I've been a voice to those who couldn't find their own. And I've been a part of advocacy, advocating for children who are growing up in the foster care system. I spent more than 10 years of my childhood in the foster care system. And I've been working with families and children and standing up for children's rights and advocating for them
Mhm.
since I was a child. And I have no intention of stopping anytime soon. So I
Yeah.
leverage my story to help make a difference in the lives of people that are still going through.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that. I wanna talk about a couple of things that you mentioned. And we can start with the foster care system since that was the last thing that you mentioned because my family just as a whole has always been involved somewhat with the foster care system. I have family members who have adopted. I have family members who does emergency placement for
Mhm.
children. And then I have family members like my mom who didn't officially adopt people, but we've always had people live with us over the years. My mom was
Mhm.
always taking people in, and even that even played out in my own life. When my sons were younger, their friends always was seemed to have troubles, and so for years, uh, when I was married, I think 10 years out of the 10 years that we were married, I think we had someone stay with us every year, just about whether it was one of
Mhm.
our kids' friends or someone that we were helping, and it was amazing how it just kind of worked out that way. That my wife and I at the time had that heart to help people out. But again, even her mom, does emergency placement and have adopted kids, not full adoption. Some of them she did, but definitely do a emergency placement over the years. So it's always been a big thing in my family, to just kind of being involved. And I don't think that when I look back, I don't think anyone in my family, like my grandmother or anyone, was actually adopted. So I don't even know where the heart for it came from. But
Mhm.
it's just been inbred like in my family as a whole. It's just like you take care of people and you look out for the widows and the children. And so I guess that's just how it played out. So even in your work there, I definitely know that there is some work that needs to be done. It
Mhm.
is a broken system in
Mhm.
some in some spaces. And so even in your work as advocating on behalf of those who are in the system, what has been some of the things that you've been worked on, or you've had the privilege to stand up and say, hey, this part here needs to be addressed?
I think my proudest accomplishment in that arena would definitely be my contributions to Assembly Bill AB 1987, the Siblings Act bill.
Mm,
And it was a bill that I worked on with a number of different people that fought for siblings to be for more of an effort for siblings in foster care to be placed together. It
yeah.
required social workers, judges, attorneys, everyone involved in that placement realm of foster care to take more of make more of an effort to place siblings together. And if we couldn't get them together in the same home, at least put them in the same community so maybe they can go to the same schools, they can see
Mhm.
each other on a regular basis. Visitation isn't as hard. And since then, there's been other bills that focused on visitation and things of that nature. But the reason why AB 1987, the Siblings Act bill, is so special to me is because it was numbered after the year that my sister Righteousness was murdered.
Yeah.
And losing her, especially the way that we lost her, definitely had a significant impact on my relationship with my siblings and the importance of us being together and seeing each other. I'm the oldest of seven girls, and I was very, very, very parentified. I was their second mom.
Mm,
And the day that we pulled up when my sister Righteousness was killed, as we navigated through that street, my mom rolled down her window and asked one of our neighbors what happened. And she said, "It's one of your babies." And when she said, "It's one of your babies," I jumped out the car and went running
mm,
back to our house as if it was one of my babies, because they were essentially my reason for not giving up, my reason for living, my reason for not joining gangs, my reasons for not wearing makeup too soon, my reason for a lot of different things. And so that's why that bill meant so much to me, because it definitely signified the significance of the sibling relationship that I strive to have with my younger sisters. And we were initially all separated.
mm.
And then slowly we got placed all in the same foster home, and we were able to grow up the rest of our time together.
Yeah, yeah, and I know that's still a thing even now, because even some of my loved ones have been facing sort of the same thing. And again, there has been some strife that's been made, even like with some of my loved ones and the kids that they foster, or the kids that they take in for emergency placements for longer periods of time, that they do have contact with like the other sibling and the other person who may have taken in the other sibling, where they do try to make sure that those siblings have time together, whether they come, to the house for the holidays or whatever, but they do try to make sure that they have that time together. And, even some of my family that's involved in it has been asked, multiple times, like, all right, could you take more than one? You know what I'm saying? And they're like,
Mhm.
I already have like multiple kids that I'm taking care of. And some there have been times where they have had, brothers and sisters and things of that nature. So definitely I would say thank you for the work that you've been doing, because there has been some strides in that area to make things, work a little bit easier,
Mhm.
for the siblings that are in foster care, to stay together, and not lose each other, because I definitely know that can be a definite hardship, besides already being in foster care, but then to be separated, from the only family that you have. And unfortunately, if the communication is not there, if the records are not kept, then you could very much lose your sibling, and not know
Mhm.
where they are. So I will again say thank you for the work that you guys did, um, to make sure that that's more accessible now, and
Mhm.
more of a thing, to try their best to keep the kids together.
Mhm.
I want to talk a little bit. You mentioned about your sister. and my condolences. But I want to talk a little bit about that because that kind of brings me to a thing as with you being the oldest and definitely being, the second mom. I am one of nine siblings, and so I have three older sisters, and so I definitely know, how that was growing up when my mom and dad would be gone, whatever they're doing. And then, my older sisters, especially the two oldest, were like the moms, you know what I mean? And they were
Mhm.
like, keep everything in order and making sure we did whatever we are supposed to do. And thankful for us, and this is something that, even recently is playing out in our, just in our circles, where we have to give thanks that we haven't lost a sibling, because
Mhm.
we have family members and friends who have lost siblings, you know
Mhm.
and just knowing the closest that we are as a family, just not trying to imagine what that would do to us, as siblings, if we were to lose one. But I want to talk to you a little bit, because I know that, like you said, you pulled up, and when they said it was one of your babies, you jumped out the car because it definitely felt like one of your babies, even though it was one of your siblings. I want to talk a little bit about the grief of that moment, right? Because, one of the things that I've dealt with, I haven't lost a sibling, but I have lost a parent, which is my mom. And I know how, going through that period, that time period, I went through a whole lot of stuff emotionally, and learning to deal with the grief, and having come out on the other side of it. That is one of the topics I talk about all the time now. Is how do we, work our ways through that grief. And so,
Mhm.
even as your family as a whole, but definitely as you begin to kind of work your way through that experience, how was that experience with you, with, I won't say experiencing grief for the first time, because I don't know if that was the first time, but definitely
Mhm.
experiencing it, firsthand yourself. And then how also did it kind of work its way with the rest of the family? How did everybody kind of process that grief?
I don't think life gave us a lot of time to process it. Um, I know for me, it made me hold on tighter. It made me more protective. Um, I subconsciously, I blamed myself. I just knew that if I was there, it probably wouldn't have happened. Simply because he drowned her in the bathtub, and I would have been the one giving her a bath. Um, and so I was at therapy when it happened, and so therapy for me what became a trigger.
Hmm.
So and I think it contributed to a lot of codependency between me and my siblings, because I needed to know everything. I needed to know what you were doing. I needed to know that you were safe. I needed to know all kinds of stuff. And then um, another sister was murdered. And so that became re-traumatizing, reliving things. And so I think that there was just a lot of unresolved pain that came up, never really truly feeling a sense of safety,
Yeah.
because the violence came at the hands of someone who was in that caregiver protective role.
Right.
So learning to trust, and learning to um, just be open to therapy and doing the work to heal has definitely been a journey. But I think when you lose a sibling, they say that it's one of the hardest losses to take, because we grew up together.
Hmm.
For some of us, like me, none of my sisters know life without me. I've been in their life their entire lives.
Hmm.
And when you're the older sibling and you've seen them come into the world, you certainly don't think that anything's going to happen to them before it happens to you.
Right.
And so my first little sister, Righteousness, she was just 2 when she was killed. And so I didn't really understand. It definitely affected my relationship with God and my understanding of just how life happens. And I didn't understand why something like that could happen to someone who definitely didn't live long enough to earn that type of karma. So it
Right.
had me go down this like um, karmic trail of trying to understand cause and effect, and really learning about generational cycles and generational trauma, and how sometimes we're dealing with things that had nothing to do with us, but we're because
Mhm.
of the choices that were made before us. And so
Yeah.
my life mission really has been about shifting the karma, shifting the generational cycles, putting a stop to some things, so that I'm not putting that responsibility on my children or on my grandchildren. And I'm so proud of myself and proud of my children for having a willingness to understand
Mhm.
why it's so important to me that they continue to break these generational cycles. And I even have conversations with my grandchildren. Um, I will say that the loss that I've experienced has definitely shaped me as a mother, and for certain has impacted the relationship that I have with my granddaughters. Um, and again, I have to say that I'm proud of myself and I'm proud of my children, because when I listen to my granddaughter's laughter, when I see them swimming in our pool, when I hear them just singing, they're so free
Mhm.
and they feel safe and they know they're safe. They know that nothing is going to happen to them on my watch. And I know that I'm so intentional with my words and the way that I speak to them and the way that I uplift them. Like one of them came to me today and she had hurt herself. And I said, baby, you're strong. I said, and your body's resilient. I want you to say it with me. Say, my body's resilient. And she said, my body's resilient. And I said, you know how I know? And she said, how, Jim? They call me Jim. And I said, because you're of me. Your mommy came from me. So a part of me is in her and a part of me is in you. And that's how I know that you're resilient, because you are of me. And I said, so I want you to trust yourself and I want you to talk to your body and I want you to tell yourself, I'm resilient and my body's resilient. And she looked at me and she said it. And when I told her she was of me, that baby looked at me like, I know I'm going to be all right because I'm of my gem. They think that I am magical, like anything, I can fix anything, I can do anything. And to have them look at me that way and trust me in that way is something that I've never experienced. And I'm so honored to know that we've been able to create something for them that looks 360 degrees different than my childhood.
Yeah.
And
And
that means
I'm
everything to me.
yeah, and I'm proud of you for that as well, because a lot of times there are different things that we lose with each generation because of the
Mhm.
experiences that we have, and sometimes it's even in that quest to do things better
Mhm.
that we change some things to make some things better, but then we kind of lose other things along the way, right? And so I'll give you part of the reason why I say that, because even in my own family, we went through a part when I was younger. My dad worked for the phone company, and at that time we lived like a middle, I want to say a higher middle class lifestyle. We had the big house with the picket fence and a dog and the camper where we took, trips in the summer and all of those things. And I remember having those things. I remember those experiences. And then there was a shift in our family. I was young at the time, so I don't even know what all happened, but I know it was over a process of a couple of years that we ended up losing everything, right?
Mhm.
So again, I got 9 siblings. So you got a husband, a wife, and 9 siblings, right? And we go from this lifestyle where we have our own everything and we're like very comfortable in everything, to a husband, a wife, 9 siblings sleeping in one bedroom in your mom's house, right? Which is my grandmother's house, and just imagining how that, affected my dad. But my parents kind of rebuilt over the years. And
Mhm.
as we struggled, we moved out of my grandmother's house. We moved into this house that really should have been torn down. You know what I mean? But it was a space, and my dad worked on this space over the years to make it, basically rebuilding into a full house where we all lived comfortably. But that struggle for those years, that it was where we lived at, we lived on a plot of land that my grandmother on my mom's side owned. And it was a nice sized plot of land, but there's only like two houses on this whole plot of land. And so we lived there, and we never, like, hardly ever had visitors or anything. So it was always just us, which
Mhm.
made our bond as a family, as siblings, really close. Well, as we began to grow up and have kids and have our own families, our bond didn't necessarily transfer to our children, and as much as we try to, like, hey, you got to stick together, and you got to, we they haven't experienced what we experienced. So
Mhm.
that same bond, even though some of the things that my mom put in place, we still do. My mom, one of the things that she did, we couldn't, it was nine of us. So if we was going to have a birthday party, we basically would have a birthday party every month. You know what I'm saying? Because it was nine of us. So if you got the nine kids and you throw in the parents' birthdays too, we're having a birthday every month pretty much. Um, and so what she started doing is having one birthday a year. So we would just have
Mhm.
one big birthday celebration. And we would celebrate all of our birthdays. And so things like that, we try to keep going, you know, uh, over the years with our particular families, even with our kids. And again, sometimes it gets lost in transition,
Mhm.
and so for you guys, for you yourself, and also your children, to buy into the notion, like, no, we're doing this together, and we're going to change the whole dynamic of this family and the things that is happening. I definitely, applaud you guys on it.
Thank
And even going back to something you said earlier, when I asked about, the experience and how you guys kind of dealt with the grief of it, yourself, from your sister, and you were saying like you don't necessarily didn't have time, right? And so I remember doing I was doing a workshop, like a 3-day workshop at a church, and I was doing it on grief and bereavement.
you.
And after it was over, one of the ladies came up to me and she said, "I'm mad at you." And I was like, "Why are you mad at me?" You know what I mean? And she said, because she thought that she had grieved her son. Um,
Mhm.
but she had lost one of her sons to gun violence, and she had two other sons. And so when she lost that first son, she put all her energy into those other two sons, and she never really took the time to grieve,
Mhm.
the loss of the first son. And this was like, I think probably almost like 10 years after
Mhm.
when I was having this workshop, and she was like, but it just kind of through the workshop that I was, working with them through, that it was like just now kind of getting to that point where she realized, like, wow, I didn't take the time. Like, I went right into full mommy mode and protective mode, and I never took the time to actually deal with, my own emotional grief of losing her son. And so I definitely understand how, sometimes life don't give us the time to do that, because, like, no, we got things to do. We got
Mhm.
other family to protect and other, boundaries and things to put in place. And so it doesn't necessarily give us that time that we need to grieve. But I think over time, you know, uh, we do, especially if we're intentional about it, we are able to grieve and still to move on. And so I definitely, again, applaud you
Mhm.
for the work that you've done, in the foster care system and with your own family, to
Mhm.
begin to change the dynamics that you guys experience. And so I want to make this, turn this the whole thing full circle, which goes back to the beginning. We're talking about resilience, and just listening to the story of you coming through the foster care system, and you coming through that grief session, and even beginning to turn the things in your family around. Definitely I can see how, yeah, that Trinity turn turning that thing through full circle. And so just when you are now as a speaker, and you're going into the schools and to kind of talk to the students about being resilient, and using your story as a backstory. What has been some of the things that you've even been able to share with them, in ways that can help them to become resilient of themselves as well?
I'm known for telling them tough times don't last, tough people do. And this period of 0 to 18 is a very short period in your life in comparison to the rest of the life that you have to live. And I always tell them that I would never ask them to do anything that I haven't done, I'm not doing, or I'm not willing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in 2021, my husband was killed in a very tragic accident.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think that I would have anything left to give. And when it came to talking to youth in particular, I felt like I couldn't look them in the eye anymore and tell them that everything was going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I wasn't able to confidently tell them, just hang on. One day you're going to look up and you're going to be so glad that you didn't give up. Because I couldn't believe that I was living that nightmare again. You know, somebody had asked me after he died, what is the one thing that you've learned about grief? And I said, I used to think that I was really good at it, and there were so many people in my life that were like, if anybody can get through this, she can. One, I didn't want to.
Mm-hmm.
I never wanted to know life without my husband. Even when we went through our rough patches, I still never wanted to know life without him. And he was so instrumental in my healing. You talk about you and your wife had never lived alone. I was with my husband from the time I was 17, and we got married when I was 20, and we never lived alone. We always had one of my siblings or my nieces,
Mm-hmm.
someone living with us taking care of family,
Mm-hmm.
us living what we felt was important, showing up for our family. I'm 47 years old. I'll be 48 in April, and I have never lived by myself. Um, and you were talking about a moment ago, the woman who said, I'm mad at you because I realized I never grieved. When literally on January 1, I felt like I had been hit by a ton of bricks. Like I felt the weight of just a ton of bricks come down on me. And I couldn't understand. I was in the bed from January 1 until like the 9th or 10th, really not understanding why I was feeling this weight and this heaviness that I could not shake. I knew it was some form of depression. I knew I was feeling some anxiety. I knew that I was really, really, really feeling the void of my husband because I'm tired,
Mm-hmm.
and I realized that I have not stopped since he died. I've been trying to make it count. I've been trying to make sure my kids were okay. Then my daughter, got engaged and she got married. My son graduated from high school. And I kept thinking, even if he was alive, I would still be struggling with my daughter getting married and my youngest graduating from high school. And he's not here. So these are all milestones where we definitely feel his absence. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so this year, like it'll be 5 years in March, on March 3rd. And I was like, why now? Why am I feeling this? I feel like I should be on the other side of this, getting out there and like living my life and continuing to explore who I am as Trinity, the woman, not the wife, not the mother, not the grandmother, not the auntie, not the sister,
Mm-hmm.
just me. So, you know, I, when I talk to these babies, I try to be the living, walking, breathing testimony of what's possible if you just don't give up.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't make them any promises. You know, what I do tell them and what I will say to every one of your listeners is everything that you've been through has prepared you for what's coming next. And it's so important. I love the name of your show, Deal to Heal, because I tell folks all the time, I tell myself all the time, Trinity, you got to feel what you're feeling so you can trust your healing. And
Mm.
we are in a numbing culture right now
Yeah.
where people are so afraid of their emotions and afraid of feeling life. But if you don't allow yourself to feel it and if you don't allow yourself to process it, then you don't really know how powerful you are. You
Yeah.
don't really know how strong you are. You don't really know what your capacity is to endure what life is giving you. Along the way, I've also learned that you weren't just given this life because you were strong enough to live it. You were chosen because of your ability to get through it, but more importantly, because of what you would choose to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remind these babies and I remind people in my audiences all the time that there's someone out there waiting for your story. And they will only hear your voice because of how you survived and because of the way that you tell it, the way that you tell your
Yeah.
story. And so for me, the only way that I've been able to make sense of why it had to be me is because of those that I'm able to help that are still going through. Um, I'm on the journey. I feel like grief and healing is on a continuum. It isn't a
Mm-hmm.
destination. I think over time, you don't stop grieving. You just learn how to carry it differently, especially when you truly understand what grief is. Grief can only exist where there was big love.
Mm-hmm.
The void that you feel is because of the love that you shared, and it's love that has nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And so my a part of my journey is just finding places to put the love,
Mm-hmm.
and I love loving Black men. Um, and so all that love that I would have been pouring into my husband and um, things that we did together that we loved, especially cooking and recreating recipes of things that we liked at our favorite restaurants. Um, I do that for my family. You were talking about your guys' children, the next generation in your family, and how they don't really understand that importance of togetherness and um, the power of that bond that family creates. But one of the things that I make my children and their friends and family members endure is that when I host, the price that you pay for me hosting you in my home is you got to listen to the story. The only way that they know why we move the way that we move, why we made the choices that we make, why we ask the things that we ask of them is if we tell the stories. How will they know? How will they know about the times of you guys living in that one room and what it felt like living in that one room at your grandmother's house if nobody tells the story of why now it's probably important to you guys that you create the stability for your family. No matter what, the mortgage on this house is going to get paid because I know
Mm-hmm.
what it was like to be homeless. I know the insecurity that it created and the lack of safety that it created in my life, not knowing where we were going to be staying that night. My children have never known that. My granddaughters, I pray, will never know that um, because of why it's so important to me.
Right.
Provisions will be in place to make sure, to the best of my ability, that they will never experience that. I'm working now to create a forever home for my family. My house has housed dozens of people, and I'm proud of that. And so I encourage those babies. I said, look, you were chosen for a reason, and the only way way you're going to find out is to keep going through. If you're
Yeah.
going through hell, don't stay there. Keep going through. Get to
Yeah.
the other side of it so that you can understand why it had to be you.
Yeah.
Understanding will come. You just got to keep moving, keep going through, keep moving forward.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. One of the things that you talked to mention, I want to just to speak on is that grief experience. And so grief, I would say grief is a wheel, right, that never stops turning. And depending on the road that you're traveling on, your experiences will change, because sometimes you're on a smooth road and you think you got it all together and you experience everything grief has to offer you, and then that road turns into a country road with big
Mhm.
potholes, and all of a sudden now you're like, you're
And
going through all these
tumbleweed.
different things. Yeah. And you're like, what happened? Like you said, I thought I was done with this, I thought I was over, and the grief was like, no, I'm just coming back around. You know what I mean? And so we definitely have to understand that, like, it's not a destination, like it's a never ending journey, and it's how that you take the journey that makes it easier for you. If you can't, you got to make time for it, you got to make space for it, because it's going to happen. You're going to have those thoughts, you're going to have those triggers, whether it's a smell or a food or a place that just take you back to somewhere. It's like, man, I remember. And so we got to make sure that we understand that grief is a wheel, and it
Mhm.
never stops turning once you get on it. Unfortunately, none of us, you know, uh, volunteer to get on the hamster wheel, but
Mhm.
sometimes we fall in there and we find our way on it. And so we just got to learn to walk with grief and allow it to become your companion, because it's not going anywhere. You know what I mean? You just got to kind
Mhm.
of go through it. Also, I want to just touch on something else that you said about sharing the stories,
Mhm.
and when I talked about, again, with my mom and us, staying in this house and all of the different things. My mom has passed away, and so even now, some of my nieces and nephews didn't get to meet my mom, right?
Mhm.
My daughter doesn't remember my mom because she was still really young when my mom passed away, and so again, telling those stories, because my mom was such a big person in our lives, and also she was a pastor too, so she kind of played two roles. Like, she's the main, she's the queen of our home, but then she's the queen in our spiritual life too, and so she played two roles. So her presence in our family was like really big, and so those my daughter and my nieces and nephews, and even some of our grand nieces and nephews and grandchildren, they never get to meet my mom, but they get to
Mhm.
hear all the stories, because
Mhm.
she plays such a pivotal part in so many people's lives that she's well represented in the stories. But again, like you said, we got to keep telling those stories so that they don't forget.
Yeah.
These are the reasons why we do what we do, and these are the things that she instilled in us, and why we are telling you that you got to keep these things going, because
Mhm.
it's important, because it came from someone, and it came from, there was a reason why she did the things that she did. And so yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely understand that 100%. And I want to
Mhm.
say I'm proud of you, right? Just
Thank
from,
you.
I'm listening to your story, and I'm listening to the insight that you have, and I know some of it comes with age and experiencing the different things that we experience, but I'm just listening to you, and even in your voice, and even as you begin to walk through, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm proud of you for the things
Mhm.
that you have accomplished, and the things that you've been able to make it through, and still hold your head up high, and
Yeah.
still talk to these babies, and still talk, to your family, and be that presence, and still be that mom. You're still the mom, right? You're the second mom now. You and now you're the first mom, in
Yeah.
your family. And
I'm the designated matriarch.
yeah, and you wear it well. You wear it well, and I just want to say I thank you so much, for being on here, and to sharing your heart and sharing your story. And I've gained, some insight today, and I just want to say thank you so very much. I want you to leave us with a word of advice, word of motivation, however you feel, and also with your social media handles
Mhm.
and things of that nature, so we know where to find you, how we can contact you. For those who want to bring you out to be a speaker, where they can find you at. And so I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about that. But to my audience, I want to say thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Make sure you guys are checking us out on our website, the dealhealfulfill.org. Again, it's dealhealfulfill.org. We are going to get a makeover pretty soon on the website, but it is up. So you can find me there, find some information about things that we have on. Also, make sure you guys go to earnestjamesspeakslife.com. Again, that's earnestjamesspeakslife.com to find more information about to having me to come out to be a speaker or a workshop facilitator at your school or organization. You can find that there. Also, ebooks by ejames.com. We are going away with this website. So get the ebooks while you can. But if you want to get the ebooks for free, make sure that you scan the code in the corner to check out our Deal to Heal School for Living. Once you get in there, you can actually get all of the ebooks for free. But if you want them right now, you want to purchase them, go to ebooks by ejames.com in order to get our ebooks, and we have several ebooks there that you can find. So make sure you guys are going there, or go just scan the QR code and go on and join our school platform, and that way you can have the ebooks as well as other resources that we have. Um, our Deal to Heal tees, we are still selling our Deal to Heal tees, which is our inspirational t-shirt line. That's deal, the number two, healtees.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That is our tagline. There are also our inspirational tees, but also our podcast merch, which is our t-shirts with our logos for the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, as well as the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast is also there. Last but not least, over the last couple of years, I've been blessed to be a part of an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have free virtual workshops bi-monthly, talking about the topic of forgiveness, forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, forgiveness of the world, right? And so these workshops are absolutely free, but the information that we give is priceless. And so you can go to forgivenessmission.com to sign up for our next virtual workshop. Whenever you listen to this podcast, there's either one that's just ended or there's one coming up. So you guys can go to forgivenessmission.com to sign up for our next virtual workshop. So make sure you guys do that. Also, one of the other things I want to bring to that we just started our non-for-profit organization, which is Deal to Heal the World Incorporated. So right now we are taking donations to help us bring more free resources to our community, whether it's workshops, whether it's food, whether it's clothing, however we feel the need is for the community. We want to be able to do more. So again, the links will be in the description. You guys can go down in order to give to the Deal to Heal the World Incorporated, so we can do more work in the community. Trinity, once again, I want to say thank you so very much for being on. Thank you for gracing us with your spirit, with your story, and everything that you do. I definitely appreciate you. I want you to have the last word, so the floor is yours.
Thank you for having me. It's really an honor and a privilege to be here talking about such an important subject for healing. And I just want all of you guys to know that everything that you've been through has prepared you for what's coming next. Allow yourself to feel what you're feeling so that you can trust your healing and know that there's someone out there that you're going to be able to help because of what you've been through and because of how you survived it and because of the way that you tell your story. So trust your resilience. You may not be where you want to be, but you're not where you used to be. And everything that you've been through, you have survived 100% of your worst days. So trust yourself. Show yourself some grace and know that no matter what you've been through or no matter what's coming next, you've got this. So do the work and Watch how the healing brings about a version of you that even you couldn't imagine or dream of becoming. So I wish everyone the absolute best. And if you need me, I'm Trinity Speaks on Facebook and Instagram. I'm Trinity Speaks Official on TikTok and YouTube. And my website is trinityspeaks.com. Feel free to reach out anytime. Take care.
All right, and we can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Until next time, you guys be blessed. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you'll enjoy the Girl Dad Discussion podcast. I'm your host, Earnest James, and I believe the relationship between a daughter and her father is one of the most important relationships a young lady can have. And therefore, my mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by sharing the voices of girl dads to the world. So check out our podcast on every platform where podcasts can be listened to. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel. Again, that's the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with your host, Earnest James.